What do you wish people would stop romanticizing because you've lived the reality of it? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. One to our soul. Leaving a toxic relationship. It's not sunshine, rainbows, and instant reclamation of who you are. It is an exhausting process that involves untangling yourself from a person who doesn't see you as a person. Story 2. Alcoholism. The number of dramatic characters who drown their sorrows by throwing back bottles of hard liquor while remaining healthy-looking and functional. The reality is so much uglier and sordid. Story 3. Working with animals, veterinary medicine. We don't play with puppies and kittens all day. Honestly, only 10% of my day is spent with the animals, and the rest is dealing with humans. We are severely underpaid. We deal with emotional and physical trauma, both in the animals and ourselves. And the most common thing we get hurled at us is we only care about the money. Even the veterinarians are buried under piles of debt and are barely making it. Do you want to know why Fluffy's vet bill is $5,000? All that money is going to corporations and pharmaceutical companies. It absolutely kills us to hand you an estimate that we know is extremely expensive. We are drowning alive out here. There's a reason this industry has one of the highest suicide rates. Story 4. What a lot of people would call romantic persistence. The idea that if you just keep chipping away at someone, asking them out, making grand romantic gestures, wearing them down, they'll eventually be won over by the sheer dedication of your desire. There's a person in my life now who's like that, and it is exhausting, infuriating, and unsettling, sometimes in turns and sometimes all at once. Take no for an answer whether you're a man or a woman. It's not cute, it's not romantic, it's just juvenile behavior. 80s teen rom-coms should not be your guide to how to live life. Story 5. The love of a good woman can fix a bad man? Or the idea that women want a bad boy? Not that I don't believe someone can change, but if someone is fundamentally disrespectful, aggressive, detached, or controlling, the best woman in the world isn't going to change that. And vice versa for women too. It is a more common theme for it to be a bad boy trope and a good woman. But it can be in the reverse, of course. Story 6. Stalking. It's not funny to have someone follow you in the dead of night with the intention of kidnapping you. It's not funny to find photos of you sleeping, taken from outside your bedroom window on your friend's phone. And it's most certainly not funny to feel as helpless and scared as I did. I tried to take my life because my stalker said if I told on him, he'd kill my parents, because I saw no way out. Stalking is no joke. Story 7. People that spend a night or a week outdoors and think that they know what it's like to be homeless. Or basically anyone that can decide to stop being homeless anytime they want to. It's an entirely different level of pressure and anxiety when you can't just choose to go back to a home. Story 8. Mental illness. I've seen an increase in shows having characters, mostly teens, wishing for a disorder like it was an accessory. Newsflash. It's a daily battle that will never end and will truly deteriorate your brain over time. Story 9. Homelessness such as couch surfing. There was nothing fun or cool about not knowing where I would go tomorrow. I was taken advantage of by a lot of people because they knew I had nowhere to go. Living on the street was significantly worse. I didn't feel like a nomad or whatever the hipster nonsense people think happens when you don't have a roof over your head. I didn't feel like I had some incredible earthly experience or gained any special wisdom. All that happened is that I got traumatized, lost all of what little I owned, and realized that most people are awful when they know you can't do anything against them. It's also shockingly expensive to be homeless. I had a job at McDonald's, but I didn't have a home or kitchen, so I ate out every day. I ate cheap food, but it adds up. I needed a gym membership to have regular showers and would get a hotel whenever I could. I paid people to let me stay with them. I hardly had anything left to save up. Story 10. Teacher here. Movies and films that have the epic teacher who is amazing and idolized and changes every student's life. And everyone says, if we had teachers like this, I actually would have learned something. No, you wouldn't have. Those teachers are romanticized and not realistic at all. The only exception IMO is Dead Poets Society. It's realistic because the teacher got scapegoated and fired at the end. Story 11. Being a long-haul truck driver, I'm not being paid to travel. You see very little except long stretches of highway and then small select areas of each city or town you stop in. The work is hard, it beats the out of your body, your mind, and your family. You spend most of your days exhausted and lonely. Story 12, autism, especially autistic women. I'm not a tortured genius, and I'm not your manic pixie dream girl either. I'm just a human being trying to deal with the fact that no matter how much I train my social skills, I'll never be able to make connections like everyone else or talk to people without eventually accidentally making someone mad and trying desperately to pick up the pieces afterwards. Mayuana Stern's Story 13. Being a touring musician in a low-level band, living in a van with 3 other stinky drunks, waiting for the next inevitable vehicular disaster, not eating for days, staying in filthy motels, sudden snowstorms, weird drifters, shady truck stops, etc. It was fun for the first half of my 20s, but it's ultimately a lonely and disassociated lifestyle. Story 14, animal rescue. I too frequently see people online commenting about how they'd love to rescue all the dogs, and having 40 dogs milling around their house at all times is the dream. It makes me want to cry, genuinely. Aside from the constant veterinary care in general, and the money that you shell out of pocket too, the very many emergency trips that land you in the overnight clinic for 6+ hours, the constant feeding, medicating, cleaning up after, and socializing with tens and tens of dogs is a full-time job that requires 24/7 of being on. Add in your actual life, like a job, school, and personal relationships, and it all falls to chaos very quickly and is very hard to escape from. Your average high-occupancy foster home does not look like the photo spreads from Better Home & Garden, and it doesn't smell like a Bath & Body Works. You and your clothes don't either. That senior rescue that used to live stream their deck with all the little senior pups outside is a complete facade. The actual trauma of picking up a dog off of transport, whose bones are nearly poking through their skin, of breaking up a fight between 2 dogs that could kill you if they wanted to, of receiving your very many own dog bites, of watching a rescue flinch because its owners used to throw them into the pool by their tail, of making the call to let an aggressive dog, who loves only you, go, of making the call to let a rescue go because they need $15,000 of veterinary care, and you couldn't raise the funds, of the falling on your ass by slipping on freshly mopped floors, of the neurotic one that breaks out of the house in a rainstorm at 3 a.m., of driving to work and realizing your stepped-in dog on your way across the yard to your car, to name a few of the more palatable experiences. For every life saved and rescue rehomed, I like to think I would take all of the trauma again and again, but it hurts my heart to know so many people think it's dandelions and butterflies. Being involved in animal rescue nearly ruined my life, and I know too many people that have fallen victim to it, but will never get out because, if not us, who the hell else would be crazy enough to do it? Story 15. Being a full-time caregiver, it's hard, it sucks, it drains you, and you don't get to live a life. Edit to respond to a couple comments. I did not choose this. It was forced on me because there is no one else. I haven't been alone in almost 10 years. 10 years! If I can't even go to the store by myself. My health is in shambles. And mom is a psychopathic, racist, homophobic narcissist. Always has been, but it's worse now. No one as higher would put up with it, and she'd get kicked out of any nursing home we could find. Story 16, celebrity chefs. Have you seen insert show name? No, I do this for a goddamn living. It isn't nearly as fun or glamorous as people perceive it. Back in the 2010s, we had a massive influx of people applying for jobs who'd gone to culinary school because it sounds fun. Okay, go cut this case of bell peppers. After that, a bag of onions, 2 cases of carrots, then go prep the line. But I don't have that much time. Better find it. Story 17. Babies, you are never prepared. Look at any first-time thrilled to be pregnant mother to be with her starry eyes and babies are so cute talk, and listen to all her plans for after the baby's born, when the pregnancy is over, and everything will be so much easier, compared to same woman 2 months after the birth. Just offering to hold the baby while she has a shower will get you the same gratitude usually reserved for kidney donors. Story 18, adoption. Some of us end up with ebbies of families, and people are so busy telling us adoptees we need to be grateful, they don't listen to us. Plus the amount of insensitive jokes you hear, because no one considers there might be adoptees present. I'm not saying being adopted is all bad in every case, but for many of us, things aren't perfect. Story 19, addiction. I feel like nearly every piece of addiction media makes it out to be an unhealthy habit that takes a little bit of willpower to break. The reality is people being trapped living the same horrible day for years of their life and escape by a miracle. It really is a life-ending disease that people outside of it can't comprehend. Story 20: Men continuing to pursue and harass women after being turned down. It is not pleasant and can terrifying for someone to not take no for an answer, or the idea that harassing someone with the hope of wearing them down, often shown positively. Story 21: Autism. We are portrayed as Sheldon-esque genius archetypes or savants that can memorize pi to 10,000 digits and cracking codes right, left, and center. For the most part, we see patterns, develop sense because we don't see social cues IDK. But for this everyday autistic, I am trying to mask to keep a job and not end up homeless with a child. Story 22. This is trivial and niche, but having fruit trees. People think the trees just produce the fruit with no effort from you at all. We have people ring the doorbell every year asking if they can pick and take our fruit. At least they're asking so we can say no. Every couple years, a social media thing goes around saying cities should plant fruit trees instead of ornamental trees to feed the homeless. Y'all, to get enjoyable fruit off a tree, you have to baby the heck out of it. Pruning every year, and it takes forever. Thinning the fruit in June. Otherwise, you end up with tiny fruit that is 90% pit. That also often takes forever. Spraying the trees every 2 to 4 weeks the entire summer to prevent insects destroying the fruit. Constantly monitoring the tree for insect damage, fungal diseases, and bacterial diseases so you can stop them before they kill the tree. Propping the branches up in the fall because even though you took 80% of the fruit off in the thinning, some branches are still too heavily laden. You never thin enough no matter how hard you try. Sometimes taking care of your tree like this all year minus the thinning and not getting one piece of fruit off it because there was a late freeze. If you count the cost of my labor, it would be much cheaper for me to buy fruit at the grocery store. I don't because it does save me actual money and because homegrown fruit tastes freaking delicious. But those beautiful trees laden with beautiful work are the result of me busting my butt to take care of them. So there is no way in hell I'm giving some away to a stranger. And fruit trees planted on a city street would result in tiny, nasty, worm-ridden fruit smashed all over the sidewalks. Story 23. You're welcome to keep romanticizing it, but saving a life at no risk to my own was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Edit. I looked this up. I've never seen anyone express the above before, but actually it's common. The what ifs, especially. If I had taken a different route, taking similar time and effort, I wouldn't have been there. If I had been 2 minutes earlier, she'd have been fine until after I was passed and then died. And if I was 2 minutes later, she'd have been dead by the time I got there. It's supposed to be glorious, but really it sucks. I don't wish I hadn't done it. I wish there hadn't been a person drowning. Don't swim alone and or while impaired. Story 24. Mental illness. Granted, I don't have it as severe as some people, but it still isn't fun. Ruminating for several months straight because of an OCD flare-up sucks. Assuming the worst-case scenario and worrying about every little thing because of anxiety sucks. Doubting your own decisions and being overly harsh on yourself because of low self-esteem sucks. Story 25. ADHD isn't quirky or cute. At my level, it's debilitating. Without my medication, I'm essentially non-functional. ADHD affects every part of my life, and it's not just about focus. It comes with things like auditory processing disorder, which makes everyday communication exhausting. People who casually take 10 millimonometers of Adderall for a boost don't have ADHD. I, on the other hand, will likely never go below 20 muscarinic of extended-release Adderall, and even that is a struggle. I've spent most of my life taking 40 millimonometers daily just to reach some sense of baseline functioning. I've tried lowering it, but it's a trade-off. Less strain on my body, sure, but a much harder time getting through the day. And then there's the withdrawal, brutal, physically and mentally. Add to that the difficulty of getting prescriptions filled because of the overdiagnosis trend, and you've got a system that fails people like me. It takes me over an hour after taking my meds just to feel functional, to have a single clear thought I can grab onto and act on. And if I don't act on that thought immediately, it's gone. That's what ADHD really looks like. It's not a productivity hack. It's a lifelong uphill climb. You know your ADHD is bad when people know you haven't taken your medication seriously. Story 26. Being on the autism spectrum, Asperger's. Yes, at times it's useful, but usually it's exhausting. And everyone assumes that autistic means stupid kid with a negative IQ who screeches and then eats glue and runs face first into the wall. Or more recently, certain rich douche canoes are trying to push the narrative that people with Asperger's are just toxic assholes, nothing to be done about it, instead of addressing narcissism and megalomania. I'm so tired, you guys. Story 27, homesteading, farming, ranching, rural, living in general. I loved growing up on a working farm. I love living in the country. I love that I can grow my own food and identify animal tracks and read the weather and drive anything with pedals and wheels and 100 other little things that rural kids learn just in their day-to-day lives and chores. I have some amazing stories about coming face-to-face with skunks and coyotes and a bobcat. I once was close enough to a stooping hawk that I heard the mouse squeak as it died. I also have terrible stories about coyotes killing sheep and losing electricity and power because of bad weather and having to spend the night in the barn to keep the cow safe. I was out of college before I completely lost my farmer's tan. I have some hilarious stories about city people moving to the country and the weird things they do. It's hard, folks, especially if you actually want it to work and aren't just playing. Living off what you can grow and store, living off the livestock you can sell at auction or the produce you sell at market is harder than you think. The chores, the constant list of things to do, caring for animals, trying to guess if it's too early or too late to plant, losing everything in a late frost or a summer flood drought, and even the lack of certain modern amenities. It's only the last couple years that we got broadband out where I live. No one delivers out where we are, and most people can't even find it. When the pump goes out, we fix it ourselves, and if there's a fire, you better be ready to fight it yourself because the nearest fire department is 30 minutes away. I love it, but it's hard. Story 28. Running a bed and breakfast. My mother started one in our house when I was in high school. She would rent out all 3 bedrooms, including mine, and I would sometimes sleep in the field nearby if I wasn't at my dad's. Then it was cleaning rooms, making breakfast, and more. She was a single mom and doing what she had to do. I didn't like it, but I respect her. And it meant my sister and I inherited some money when she died last year, or certainly more than we would have otherwise. Story 29. Not working due to disability. So many people think that being on disability is a constant vacation. No, it's not. I can't believe the number of people who don't realize that a life of pain and bad health, plus a life of barely scraping by financially, is not a good life. Trust me, I'm not playing on easy mode. I'm dealing with life-altering illnesses, body-wide daily pain, 13 different daily medications, and a disability check that will forever keep me way below the poverty line. Constant doctor's appointments, the pharmacy runs, keeping track of medications, finding a way to pay for all the necessary tests and treatments, etc. And then you get to hear everybody talk about how most people on disability are faking it. How pretty much anybody getting any kind of government help is faking it or taking advantage of it. And it's even worse when you have a so-called invisible disability, which is pretty much anything that doesn't involve a wheelchair. But yup, when you see me with my handicapped license plate, pulling into my very old and very unsafe ghetto government apartment with my bag of pills from the pharmacy and my food from the local food pantry, you assume I'm having the time of my life while you toil away at your job. If anybody has any questions about what it's really like, feel free to ask. Story 30. 18-month-old and middle-aged dude like 40 men plus. It's not romantic, it's creepy, and the guy is pathetic for going after someone who still thinks and acts like a child with no life experience. I'm all for age gaps, but I prefer if the woman is not on the cusp of barely an adult. Story 31. Homeschooling. The studies that people like to cite claiming that homeschoolers outperform public schoolers have highly flawed data collection and sampling. To summarize, these studies are able to look up the stats for pretty much all public schoolers, but only have voluntary data from homeschoolers. Homeschooling families like mine that did a job sure as hell weren't volunteering their test results. I don't think it should be illegal or stigmatized because it can be amazing, but the homeschooling community at large is also rife with abuse and neglect. I even knew families who pulled their kids out of public school to homeschool because they were tired of having CPS called on them. We need to put some safety measures in place to make sure those kids are getting a proper education and better protection overall. Story 32. Forced marriage and romance books. I come from a culture that still has arranged, semi-arranged marriages. There is nothing romantic about it, and 85% of those marriages do not end up in happily ever after. Again, I come from a culture where women are considered second-class citizens. Why so many U.S. women want to give up their agency is beyond me. And again, most women I know, including my own family members that are miserable. There is no quitting time. You are constantly working. No pay, and your husband controls the money, and he thinks you're not working because you're home all day. Never mind keeping a household running, taking care of children, and all the other tasks that make up life is more than a full-time job. Story 33, being a sap. I love it. I love being at home with my daughter every day. I love cooking as well. I also love that I have the choice to do this. It is exhausting though. The house is never the way I want it. Dishes pile up. Some days I'm so exhausted by the end of the day I can't sleep. All these picture-perfect TikTok Sams with their perfect houses, perfect children, time for socializing, going to the gym, cooking fresh food all day are rich and have amazing support systems. The vast majority of us don't. Story 34, living abroad. I've lived abroad for a total of 6 years here and there, not consecutively, usually chunks of 1 to 2 years, in my early to mid-20s. And now it annoys the hell out of me seeing U.S. influencers romanticize it and be kind of arrogant about it. They often don't even speak the language of the country they moved to. And none of their friends are locals. They hang with other annoying Americans who force their own way of life instead of adapting to the local culture. If they did, maybe they would realize what I did as someone who really tried to stay away from the American bubble. It's hard. It's lonely as hell. No matter how close of friends you become with someone from that country, there will always be cultural references you don't understand, slang you never learned. It's harder to be funny and charming in a second language. You miss the ease of just understanding how everything works, the creature comforts of home country, foods, transportation, relationship dynamics, public etiquette. Don't get me wrong, living abroad was the most important and impactful experience I've had, and I am happy I did it. But it was really, really hard sometimes. Not to mention, I moved home to the U.S., and all my friends I left behind for my big adventures are now well integrated in friend groups and lives that I wasn't a part of, so now I don't know where I really fit. Again, I love living abroad for all it taught me, but the people you see online romanticizing it are probably super annoying to the locals, LOL, and not actually trying to let go of their home country mindset and adapt and immerse themselves in their host community. Story 35, I did volunteer work helping women who've been trafficked, been in the industry for too long, and wanted out but didn't have the resources, and domestic abuse victims. I really hate how work has become this, do a dance on TikTok to sell some pussy pics and you can make $1 bajillion or whatever, when the reality of most work is homeless women, women who were teenage runaways, and other vulnerable groups. Those movies about a prostitute being swept off her feet by a rich, handsome Prince Charming is so far from reality it makes me sad to watch. Story 36. Oddly enough, living in the Deep South tends to be romanticized by a surprising number of people. That is not to say that living in the Deep South is some constant barrage of horror or anything, but when I see people making videos on life in the South, they tend to over-glamorize it. I think they are trying to be nice and to avoid offending people who live here, and there are still great things to find here, and it is still part of an extremely wealthy country. But I find people tend to downplay a lot of the problems it has, such as its high levels of poverty, low-quality education in many places, poor access to medical care, religious fundamentalism, low wages, homophobia, etc. Story 37. The American Dream. The bullshit story of how great it is to be impoverished, then become rich. Even when this happens, it isn't the great story they pretend it is. It's a story of state failure to protect its citizens. There's nothing to be proud of when we're talking poverty in the wealthiest country in the world. Story 38, the farm life. I had that experience as a kid and hated it. I have heard so many people talk about what a great life it would be. Unless you live on a dairy farm, there is a lot of downtime. The long year-round days as a farmer is a myth. The issue with downtime is there isn't much around you to enrich your life. You live in areas devoid of real culture. So many living in rural areas turn to alcohol. Good for those growing our food. I mean that with a lot of sincerity. If you are used to being surrounded by activity, the void of living on a farm will drive you insane. Story 39, farming, or living that good old country rural life that influencers like Ballerina Farm advertise. My mom grew up on a dairy farm in a rural area. She said it was pretty lonely and didn't want to raise us in an area like that. Some of my family still works in that farm, and the hours they work are just exhausting. Farmers have one of the highest suicide rates of all professions. Story 40, weight loss. I've now been a class 3 obese person and a person with a normal BMI. I've lost 140 and no part of my life is better. I'm not healthier. I was actually healthier before. I'm not happier, was way happier before. Nothing is better. In fact, doing this has created more problems than anything. Weight loss won't be a cure for whatever people think it'll be a cure for. Story 41, mental illness in general, but bipolar specifically for me. My mental illness did not make me strong, or more creative, or more interesting. It just almost killed me a couple of times and made me destroy relationships and lose opportunities I cared about. It fucked up my life for a long time, and there are years that I can't get back. I've worked my ass off to be stable and take responsibility for the things I did so I wouldn't hurt anyone else. Also, no one can love you out of it. Silver Linings Playbook. Story 42, the being a librarian. It's a hybrid corporate babysitting, teaching, tech, customer service, marketing gig that pays you. Like literally often not enough to live on without a partner supporting you. Even if you pay for the grad school required for most permanent full-time positions. And reading books comprises 0% of your job responsibilities unless you do, like story time for preschoolers at a public library. There are rewarding moments, of course. There always are when you're working with other humans. But 98% of it is meetings, emails, entitled customers, and now vindictive government entities coming after you. Story 43. The idea of taking a break from life to get you in order. No, I didn't go to a spa to get away from my responsibilities because I'm lazy. I had a week-long doctor mandated stay in a mental hospital because my brain broke, wouldn't function, hallucinations, paranoia, severe psychological breakdown. Even after they released me, I had seizures and couldn't tell you my name. I now have an entire month of my life missing from my memory. People, especially those that are caregivers, need breaks. The way social media demonizes them is so upsetting and gross. Story 44, farming. People think they'd be leaving behind the rat race. It'll be so calming. I was raised on a cattle farm. My father still works when in his 60s. He works from dusk until it's done. Sometimes he'd have to go right back out after supper. There's no days off. They need food and they probably broke something. You'll be filthy. You'll be more exhausted than you can comprehend if you've never done manual labor. Doesn't matter what you want to do. Sick, new game comes out. Gotta work until everything is right for that day. And Tornado Jr. is now 5 miles away. He got out and is walking around someone else's yard. Have fun wrangling an ornery bull. And sometimes you'll be smoking at the dinner table while your kids get every scrap of meat of that animal you shot because that's all you have right now. Don't worry about me, kids. You guys have it all. And took the furnace with it. So we're gonna camp in the living room and tell stories. We'll get the sleeping bags. It'll be fun. Because you didn't make enough back from your sale. If they did even sell. We had a lot of living room camping days growing up. If we were lucky, it'd be in summer so we could always have more fruit while Dad went hunting. But in winter, we ran through the stored food quickly, and sometimes Dad couldn't get something to shoot. He'd walk through snow or heat miles to the next neighbor to get what they had. Dad fed them when they came to our door, so it's good. While he gave us every bit, and he had some bread and an old jerky he had for one meal the whole day. There's good days, times when Dad made enough for us to go to the lodge and have a great time. And even regular times where it was tight but doable. This was usually the default, to be fair, but all that stuff restarts the next day. At least we never got bullied for those times. The whole area was in the same boat. But every time someone acts like they think living off the land would be so great, I just see my dad hunched over at the table, trying to keep the panic out of his eyes for us, smoking his meal. Story 45, poverty. To me, in films, shows, even musicals, poverty is seen as, oh, lights are out. Let's light candles. Oh, no food. Let's gather what we can and eat fast food. Oh, how fun. Oh, my darn landlord is giving me issues because I forgot to back. Let me have a crazy adventure to make up the amount I need before I get kicked off to the streets. It's not cute. It's not all that fun. It's hard to keep your head above water. Living check to check is so stressful. I don't ever want to feel that again. Story 46. People love going to church. People don't want to set up or maintain anything that goes into it. They just want to read the stories and sing songs about the one Middle Eastern person they've ever pretended to respect. Hate working Holy Week. Story 47, being transgender. I've lived with it for 40 years and transitioned almost 15 years ago. In recent years, there has been an increase of young people who are jumping on the bandwagon solely to seek attention or to get special treatment, or they're using it as a way to express their progressive ideology without actually dealing with the same levels of gender dysphoria that might lead a trans person to kill themselves. Actual gender dysphoria is not fun. It's not a fun adventure to transition, and gender dysphoria isn't something I would wish on anyone. Pretending to be trans to weaponize it for your political beliefs is disgraceful and unfair to other trans people whom you don't represent. They've opened up the door to ridicule by making it appear that all trans people are social justice warriors who like to play dress up to seek attention. The flamboyant subset of drag culture that used to coexist beside trans culture has become a blurred mess with our own in this heated political climate. I couldn't give a crap about the politics about it or what someone may think. There's no refuting the legitimacy of gender dysphoria and the need to have medical access to care for it. I literally wouldn't be here today without having transitioned. Though I do understand the concerns about children being indoctrinated and the potential issues with MTF trans girls playing in cisgender female sports, I also find it a little offensive when I see people who, I am almost positive, don't deal with actual dysphoria who are pretending to be trans for the social benefits. And it's even more offensive when anti-trans people point to them and try to group us all together under that ridiculous parody. I honestly just want people to shut up about us and leave us alone. Legitimate trans people just want to fit in like normal people and have a happy life. We aren't out there trying to convert your children or raping babies or trying to do any of the other crazy things you say. I'm sure this post will certainly offend people on both sides of the topic, but sometimes the truth hurts. TLDR, stop pretending to be trans for the benefits. I wish everyone would just leave us alone. Story 48, fundraisers for things that should be the government's responsibility, i.e., little Timmy sets up a lemonade stand and raises $5,000 and pays off all the outstanding lunch money debt at the local school, and everyone cheers instead of asking why kids don't get free school lunch. Or Uncle Mike has to start a GoFundMe to cover little Jenny's cancer treatments. And yay, he raised $25K, so they won't face bankruptcy now. What a country. Story 49, eating the rich. I'll tell you right now, their legal resources are basically in another dimension to yours. Without going into exact details for legal reasons, I was part of a situation that seemed like a guarantee win for us. Every lawyer we talked to said it was. There was no world where it would go in his favor, and he probably wouldn't even care since the settlement wouldn't be that big anyway. The guy is worth $500 million plus. And even he admit he was wrong in this particular situation to us in private conversations. Turns out he cared, or at least his personal legal team did. We were stuck in legal hell for 8 years. Our lives an open book, appointments with lawyers, his team digging into our everything for anything they could go after us on, and all of it was completely frivolous. Every time we made progress, they'd delay. We can't eat the rich. We can't touch them at all. It made me realize what kind of system we really are in. You will be eaten because you don't have a legal team. You don't have accountants that do sketchy, and if they ever get caught, they just lock it away for a decade and drain you until you give up. I laugh at all the people celebrating the downfall of Elon Musk here. Like any of that matters at all. The guy's worth $250 billion, and SpaceX was just valued at $350 billion. Good luck. You could drain 99% of his wealth, and he'd still be a mega multi-billionaire. You aren't eating him, and he's not going away. This whole experience made me a borderline nihilist. I just do on my own now and ignore the world because it... Story 50. Caregiving for a person with a degenerative condition like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. Sometimes it isn't rewarding, sometimes it is traumatic and leaves the caregivers burnt out and suffering mental health issues. Caregivers can die before the sick person because their needs are thrown aside. But if they complain, society attacks them. Story 51. Being different in any context. A good example is how people call their most lukewarm takes as hot to feel like they're different, like they're even and edgy. This commodification of uniqueness, performance of boldness is insulting. It's literally an insult to real difference, be it internet takes or other aspects of life. Real difference hurts. Real difference gets punished. You risk being ostracized, hated, misunderstood. You burn bridges, you lose people, you question everything, including yourself, and having the audacity to mimic the aesthetic of that struggle while running from even the slightest consequence. It's mockery dressed up as self-expression. It's cowardice. It's ego masquerading as originality. People want the title without the trial, the pride of having integrity without the price. Story 52, depression. I had a severe case several years ago and still take antidepressants. It'll likely be years if ever that I'll stop. I spent the better part of a year basically housebound, dreaming of things like suicide, not taking proper care of myself, listless and constantly tired. My appetite was affected and I put on major weight and I stopped brushing my teeth properly. So when I was finally able, I ended up needing 10 fillings. I had previously never had a filling in my life. I had a good helping my anxiety to go along with it, which is why I struggled to leave the house, had nausea whenever the phone would ring, and it affected my body physically to the point I would have attacks of nausea and vomiting so bad it would keep me without sleep for up to 48 hours and have me not eat for those 2 days. My then best friend also ditched me during this time, so that was great. In short, depression, especially when paired with anxiety, is not fun and should not be romanticized. Story 53. Mothers, just because you pushed out a crotch goblin doesn't mean you're a goddess or the ground you walk is holy. Mine was a neglective, abusive, irresponsible, unfaithful, drunk piece of that didn't deserve children. You got people on TV and in Hollywood and influencers that say like, she's a boss bitch because she's a mother. No, the way she climbed through life and made something of herself and triumphed over adversity and didn't take no for an answer while having a child on top of all that made her a boss bitch. Not just because, oh, she shat out another possible burden to society and took care of them because that's her duty as a parent or what have you. All right, got that off my chest. I'll be expecting your downvotes. Let me have them. Story 54. Must be nice is something I hear from assholes who hear I can't work due to a disability. I have ADHD and severe anxiety, GAD, as well as panic disorder. It's not nice. I would love to be normal and have a job and not have everyone look down on me for being a worthless piece of. I'd love to not be thrown into that fight or flight mode constantly, doing everyday activities, or from triggers that seem stupid to everyone else, and even to me. I'd love to never have a panic attack again. I'd love to not be too overwhelmed to function when too many people are around, or when it's loud or bright. That would be nice. Story 55, forensic work or CSI. All these TV shows make it look sexy and cool. In reality, when violence occurs to someone, it is never on their best day. When their house is super organized and all their dishes are washed, the litter box is clean, and the laundry is all in the hamper. There's usually not a super weird or kinky reason why someone committed violence to them. There is usually not any grand conspiracy. The victim is usually a totally normal person, living a totally normal, messy life, and then something bad happens to them, and now there are all these investigators in their home, asking questions, going through all their stuff. And there is usually not a eureka moment on the scene where the whole case is solved in an instant. These investigations are long, tedious, and physically exhausting. There are sights and smells that will stay with you forever, and you can do all that work, collect all the evidence, and get it back to the lab to process it and not generate any information to assist the investigation. Story 56, owning horses. The responsibility is crazy. You don't want to own a horse, you want access to one. We own 6 and are responsible for 10 every day. We don't get days off. We don't get sick days. We don't get vacations. We don't own them. They own us. Don't get me wrong. We love it, but most don't understand the cost and commitment it takes. I work full-time at our barn, and I have to work full-time outside the house to make money. The number of people who buy a horse just to turn around and get rid of it a year later because they don't fully grasp the time and money it takes is disgusting. Story 57, having children. I love my 4 and I could never see my life without them. But after having no family support during their younger days, I would have waited until I was actually strong enough to go through it without them. Babies are cute and all, but it's really hard when you have no help at all. Story 58, mental illness, especially anxiety. There is nothing romantic of being absolutely terrified almost 24/7 for absolutely no reason. It's not, oh goodness, I'm anxious. Tee, look at me in my big shirt, please protect me. It's my entire body feels like it's on fire. My chest hurts, my head hurts. I want to throw up and I am afraid to move. Story 59. Owning a small business, particularly with employees. Each employee and their families and young children depend on your ability to steer the ship. You're the one who clients call when someone you hired fucks up. You're the one who has to fill in when someone quits, no matter how remedial the task is. You're the one who has to make the unpopular decisions that affect the people you see every day. It's your assets that are collateral to keep the business running. And there's a good chance you're severely undercompensated, possibly even losing significant money. Story 60. Pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood in general. It's not magical, it's not precious, it's not the miracle of life. It's all a lie. Medically speaking, a fetus is a parasite. It behaves and sustains itself through parasitism. Same-species parasitism is called intra-specific parasitism. Yes, it can be of the same species, of its host at the host's expense. Your body has to go to war to defend itself from the fetus, and even then, it's not enough. You will still lose valuable resources, and it can cost you your teeth, bones, liver, pancreas, blood, heart, bladder, or even your immune system and more. After that, your body is devastated and in shambles. Your literal mind is on the line, and it's never talked about enough just how damaging pregnancy is. But once someone goes through it and has any sort of trouble or dares to tamper the cloud of sunshine and rainbows, you are shamed and attacked for it. Think of all those people chucked into mental asylums after giving birth due to psychosis, depression, anxiety, and more, just bred and tossed with no regard for their personhood. Think of all those people told to just get over it, or at least the baby's safe, if you dare bring up how traumatic and damaging pregnancy was for you. It's absurd. Story 61. Past eras, like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Actually, any past era of any kind. Gen Xers, my generation, seem to be the worst for romanticizing this. My boomer mother looks back on her historical eras with balance. Xers not so much. More of the, everything was so great in the 80s and 90s. I completely disagree. People forget husbands could legally abuse their wives. Women were truly second, third-class citizens. Until 1966 in Australia, women had to give up their jobs in the public service when they got married. My own mother missed that by only 4 years, having married my father in 1970. Women couldn't even get a loan without a male guarantor until 1971, 4 years before my birth. Children living in situations of abuse were silenced, and that was normal. Zero mental health services, rampant, unchecked abuse, no protections, no effective laws concerning any of it. I think people really underestimate the depths of oppression that has always gone on. I haven't even mentioned the terrible things that went on, are still going on, with white oppression of indigenous people here in Australia, babies stolen from their families, and it was illegal for them to speak their native languages. I could write and write and write on that, but I'll stop here. I would never go back to those times, no matter how good the music, how much fondness for those times that we carry into the now. Things will never be perfect and oppression will always exist, but it was worse back then, a lot worse. Story 62, the mob. I live in the Vegas area and people constantly say they wish they'd rule the casinos and area again. I'm of Sicilian descent. Some of my relatives live in northern NJ and they're disgusting, loathsome people. If they want to romanticize Southern Italian anything, Vegas could learn real Sicilian food instead of the Italian-American BS they try to pass off. Story 63, I can fix them. Being in a relationship with a mentally ill person, you can't fix them. They won't be magically better just because your company and love is so amazing. My partner self-harmed before and during our relationship. My partner attempted suicide before and during our relationship. My partner went to therapy before and during our relationship, and so on. I am not talking about a light depressive episode. I am talking about severely mentally ill people. You saw a movie about love fixing everything? It was a movie. It won't happen in real life. Story 64, terminal illness and disability. I was born with a terminal heart condition. It was expected I would live a year at most. Thanks to 20-plus heart surgeries, including some experimental ones, I'm going to be 26 in May. My new life expectancy is 30. And the amount of people who have tried to make my circumstances seem inspirational or like a lesson or a gift from GED makes me want to tear my hair out. People asked to pray over me in public in my wheelchair. I was a Make-A-Wish poster child for a while. My mother ran a blog solely dedicated to updating strangers about my health. I'm not an accessory to remind abled people to be grateful for their working bodies. I'm not a tragic beauty snatched away too soon. I'm not a star that shone hard and burnt fast. I'm a bitter, traumatized, foul-mouthed human being who traumatizes everyone close to me because they know that they'll have to lose me. My mom wants me to write a memoir. People tell me my story helped them all the time, and I hate it. I hate it so much. It hasn't made me grateful or a good person. It's made me tired and angry. Story 65, international travel. Romanticizing. No one cares if you really do it. It's totally an internal experience. Peace Corps, etc. Anyone asks, where did you serve? You say, I don't want to talk about it, like those who have been to war. It's nothing you can share, so why bother? International travel like breakfast in Monte Carlo. No one does that. It's more like sleeping under a bush while hitchhiking on the Autobahn. Story 66. The Knight in Shining Armor. Women who think about being swept off your feet and then taken away from any problems and living happily ever after. I myself, this would be great, but it usually doesn't happen that way, and so they miss some really good men out there who maybe aren't exactly that knight. While it hasn't happened to me exactly in that way, initially it seems so wonderful, then reality kicks in and you realize they are just human. Relationships aren't easy nor always fun, great, or passionate. Find a decent man, a good man, and build your lives together out of respect and love. Story 67. Mental illnesses, depression is not just a case of the sads. Anxiety is not cute. Oh, I have such anxiety about this date. No, you're nervous or everything has to be just so. I am OCD about my stop trying to make mental illness trendy. It's a nightmare most of the time. I appreciate the increased visibility, but it's not cute. It isn't a fad or a trend. Story 68, giving CPR. It's terrifying, and the odds of someone surviving from just CPR is horrifying. CPR only works if that person get access to medical care and fast. Doing a PhD, that is lonely as absentee parents. Having a dad who seems cool but is never around when it matters you up in ways you'll never realize. I can't trust people to stay when they say they will. Being a trauma survivor. It didn't make me stronger. I made me stronger. I'm not some inspirational story. The man who assaulted me didn't even get a slap on the wrist, even though I reported him. He was a medical professional. I can now never go on that ward again for my chronic issue. Being the victim of violent crime. I was armed, robbed. Knife crime is terrifying. I don't want to hear what people think they would have done, because no, you wouldn't. You can't say what you would have done in that situation. Off. Having chronic illness, sure, chronic pain. Again, I am not some inspirational story for you to hold up as evidence that we can do anything if we just try hard enough. No, I am exhausted. I want to stop being in pain. I want to be able to make long-term plans. Late diagnosis of neurodivergence. You know what? I'm tired of not being able to remember what I remember. I'm tired of second-guessing what I've learned. I'm tired of not having the tools which would help me access and retain knowledge. I'm tired of having a brain full of useless but not having active recall of stuff I should know. Being bullied, same as absentee parents, but also with being neurodivergent, I don't know now if someone is saying something, like telling me they're my friend, and laughing behind my back. School as a queer person, I feel like this is self-explanatory. Personally, I was a non-binary kid in an all-girls school at a time when the term non-binary wasn't known well. On the plus side, though, there is no insult I could come up with that would hurt me anymore. Teenage girls are creative. Girls are edited to add Britain. Seriously, stop romanticizing this dystopian hellscape of a country. Story 69. I wish people would stop seeing ADHD as the stereotype of a hyperactive little boy who gets distracted by squirrels or causes trouble constantly. I spent my whole life being called annoying, lazy, exhausting, dramatic, being bullied by kids and adults because I have hyperactive ADHD, but I'm not a boy, so it's not socially acceptable to display those symptoms. I even had a psychiatrist tell me that girls with ADHD are usually quiet and don't really show hyperactivity. This is completely false. People either don't believe me and punish, abuse me for the way my brain works, or they believe me but then infantilize me, talking to me like I'm a pet. I am able to focus, I just don't get to decide what my brain focuses on. If I start reading a very interesting article, my brain latches into the dopamine, and I will spend the next 8 hours doing as much research into that topic as possible without remembering to eat, wash, drink, etc. It is disabling in many ways. It's not as simple as learning new behavior when there is a significant neurological difference. It took me so long to realize I'm clever and capable, because the people I was raised around gave up on me by the time I started school. I don't understand all of the social rules you follow, but that doesn't make me stupid or a bad person. And even if I can be annoying sometimes, that's not the moral failure people make it out to be. I will never understand what it's like to feel normal. I know there are good traits within ADHD, but if I could experience just a day without it, I'd take that chance in a heartbeat. Story 70, Grit, Hard, Grind Culture. I started life as a janitor and eventually got an advanced degree and work in finance. The vast majority of those folks came from money, but create this grind narrative to convince themselves they didn't start on third base. Also, the character-building aspect of being poor and climbing the ladder. Maybe the first year or two it builds character. After that, it's just brutal. Story 71, Living in Italy. It's an extremely difficult country to live in. It's decades, if not generations, behind in feminism. It's profoundly racist and quite xenophobic. The economy is in shambles and the government is corrupt. I say this as a part Italian person who has lived there, speaks the language, looks Italian, and has a deeply Italian name. Believe me, you don't want to live there. You want to go on vacation there. Same rules apply for dating Italian men. It's not a chick flick. Navigating a multicultural relationship is hard work. He will choose his mother over you. Story 72. Maybe controversial, but traveling, hippie culture. I left my country when I was 19 and decided to work, travel around the world. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun, but it certainly isn't what Instagram portrays it to be. If you don't have much money, you end up in some pretty skanky places with pretty skanky people, and then you realize that you are pretty skanky as well. Van life is really quite smelly, and it's no joke trying kick a weed addiction when you find yourself ready to live a more settled life. I still love traveling, but I do it with money now, which makes it much more enjoyable. Story 73, Being Depressed. Media made it seem so cool and aesthetic and, wow, you're just edgy and you don't care about anything. In reality, you care so much you become numb. Some depressed people I know would have their teeth rot because they never had the energy to brush them, would get flies in their house because they didn't have the energy to throw the trash out. When I was depressed, I would oftentimes cry until I threw up or passed out. For some months, I ate exclusively frozen pizza because I just didn't have the energy to cook anything else. And even that, I only ate when I was genuinely, truly sick from hunger. It's not nice or cool, and people don't actually want to be with you because you don't have the energy to actually properly maintain a relationship. I used to just not respond for days. Everyone says they want to be depressed or want your mentally ill girlfriend until they actually see the reality of it and then want to back down. Also, something I don't see often, but some people do romanticize, is being sexually abused. I saw a disgusting post about a person saying they wish they would be desired to that extent. The grossest thing I have ever read. Story 74. Hood thug culture, especially from upper-class white girls. They seem to be very intrigued by it. Yes, it makes a good story and interesting TV characters and rappers, but the actuality of it sucks. Being poor and getting into constant confrontations isn't fun. Maybe as a teenager, but definitely not as an adult. I was never a gangsta myself, but I was raised on the block and saw and hung around enough to see past the glamorization as I entered my 20s. There is so much more better things to do in life than join a gang. You get nothing from it, just an adrenaline rush, but that's literally it. There's more productive ways to find that thrill. Story 75, Military Service in America. As someone who was an active duty combat arms officer and gone through rigorous training, I can tell you that the training and resilience the military taught me was valuable. However, I will never understand the romanticism of all of our veterans nowadays as heroes protecting our nation. From what? I have multiple friends who still to this day have no idea what they accomplished in OAF or OEF, and look at both regions now. Moreover, people from the post-9/11 military are not to be venerated just because they wore the uniform. The military is a terribly run bureaucracy where meritocracy doesn't exist. The saying, good enough for government work, rings massively true in the largest government-funded org in the country. Nearly every competent officer I knew got out and used their GI Bill as soon as they could. The lifers stay in because they know they can. The military is a stable career. But please, for the love of God, can we stop romanticizing military service and those who wore the uniform as heroes? Story 76, Polyamory. I've been openly poly for nearly 16 years, And some of the most important traits everyone must have to make plural relationships work is lots of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and maturity, which most people do not have. My last few relationships ended on sour and nuclear notes because of either double standards or because one person got jealous and didn't want true equality and were not actually poly at all. Among many other issues, of course. Being poly is a ton of work. On the relationship, on yourself with others. If there is no clear communication, awareness, and respect for everyone's time and feelings, then it will not only not survive, it will not end well. Story 77, being an organic farmer. I ran a decent scale, very popular farm for 22 years in an area with rabid support for local food. Despite that support, all my farm friends are broke, arthritic, and divorced. I personally am arthritic, divorced, and while not quite broke, am definitely badly bent. Get some chickens, grow a garden, raise a pig to scratch that itch. Don't make it your source of income. Story 78, van life. Yeah, it's cool to be somewhat self-sufficient and have your whole life in a van, drive, live where you want, etc. But after a couple of days, you spend so much time just dealing with inconveniences of not having a stable place or a home. Laundry, always got to find somewhere to wash dry, and you're stuck waiting for it. Bathrooms, depending on your tolerance, can be tough. Food, don't have room to store more than a few days' worth, if that, so you're always grocery shopping. Showering, always got to find somewhere to shower, maybe a gym membership. Even silly things like temperature regulation. It's a constant chore to either keep the thing cool or warm and uses quite a bit of resources, which is another headache all in itself, constantly getting fuel. The list goes on. You're just constantly driving from one place to another every day to facilitate those basic needs of life. It's doable and has some perks, but you just spend so much of your time and money being devoted to the basics. Story 79. As much as I love Scotland, people romanticize the whole country way too much. It is so beautiful, people are great, cities are cool, but there are many, many problems too. It's not all Highland cows, haggis, heather, beautiful locks, and thistles. It's also housing crisis, homelessness, violent children, moldy buildings, rat problems, the crisis, shite weather, scary and dirty streets. I lived there for 5 years and it's one of my favorite countries, but it has many faults. Story 80, mental illness. I work in mental health. It's not cute or funny or romantic. Some people are permanently dependent on meds and counseling because they legit cannot function in society. It should not be oh, you don't need those meds. Do weed, shrooms, shush, insert here instead situation. Some people have to have lifelong treatment and there's no magic elixir that will work. Their brain literally doesn't produce or absorb enough of the necessary chemicals to function, so they need to be supplemental with medication, and their behaviors and thoughts managed by a trained professional. Being really good friends isn't a replacement for professional help. Can't stand the crappy TV or movie therapist that just gives advice to the client. Story 81. When having a child, the newborn phase. I love toddlerhood. Newborn phase was practically sleep torture and anxiety through the roof trying to figure out breastfeeding, which was, at least for me, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, even harder than an almost unmedicated labor and delivery. That combined with begging 1.5 hours of sleep a night and not being able to sleep during the day. Also worrying they might fall ill when they are still obligate nose breathers the first few months. Give me an angry toddler any day over a newborn. Story 82, domestic violence, especially in media. The number of YA novels that do this makes my head spin. If 50 Shades of Grey was written about a man in a trailer park, it'd be an SVU episode. Nothing about it is romantic, yet so many women love it and desire to have their own Christian. Those who have been victims of DV, like me, or are in the BDSM community, have gone on and on for years about how unrealistic and abusive it is. Story 83, OCD. OCD is insidious. It is not a quirk or a cool, edgy thing. It's a life-altering disorder. I do not wish the hold that OCD can have on you on anyone, because the only way I can describe it, for me anyway, is like you have absolutely no authority of your thoughts. You may feel like you're not allowed to think certain thoughts. Rituals can take up most of your time. As far as I understand, when you perform the rituals, it strengthens the negative thoughts around obsessions, so you do the rituals more. This cycle can repeat until you're spending so much time doing rituals that your sense of self, your occupational being is lost. You stop being able to engage in those occupations that give you joy because all you think about is the OCD. I do not underestimate it. Do not laugh about it when you do not know the hell. If you know someone with OCD, educate yourself. If anyone reading this has it, has overcome it, I'm so proud of all you've achieved to combat this incredibly misunderstood illness that we still don't know everything about. Story 84, working 60+ hour weeks. I see people bragging about working long weeks all the time. I've been there, done that. That is not living. All you can get done is going to work. You have no time to get personal things done, no time for family or friends. Forget about anything you want to do for fun for yourself. You won't have the time nor energy. You'll have all this money, but the only thing you'll be spending it on is bills for a house you're barely at. Story 85, living on the streets, being a good street fighter. My husband lived on the street for years as a kid, and we foster teenage boys from the streets. Yes, they are all worldly, tough, good bare-knuckle street fighters, but they did it literally to survive a world full of violent predators, their parents often being the first. After winning a fight over food, for example, they'd lie bleeding, terrified under a bench trying to sleep while not being assaulted by junkies. That whole world is not cool. It's utterly traumatizing. Story 86, borderline personality disorder. I've straight up had psychiatrists tell me they don't treat people with the disorder over the phone trying to set up an appointment multiple times. Had therapists judge me from the first session, one even making the joke, "Oh, here we go," and making jabs at me, reported her immediately after. It's not cutesy, it's non-stop abandonment issues, fears, and self-sabotage because the feelings you have are so intense. After 4 years with the right therapist and meds combo, I manage okay, but this ain't cute. Story 87, high-functioning autism, or being twice exceptional. It's not being quirky, it's not fun. Just today I was cooking dinner for the family and everyone had demands while I was setting up my task quo. I ended up getting overstimulated and I could literally feel my frontal cortex turning into mashed potatoes and felt my constant internal dialogue turn into a glitched robot. Lost the ability to speak coherently for about a solid hour. Got most of dinner finished, but that's where my productivity ended because all I could do after that was stare at the wall. And this mode or feeling usually lasts the rest of the day, but it can go for days before I can snap out of it and become high functioning again. Sure, I got straight A's in class without even trying. Sure, I can have a personality that seems colorful and unique, but it's only because my brain is literally made different, it works different. Any quirkiness is literally just me being honest, and everyone else finds it hysterical because it comes out in a different way, which is frustrating because then you can't build a connection with anyone unless you just assume the role of a comedian and roll with it. Oh, and not to mention the part where my internal thinking voice is actually 3 separate voices that are constantly chattering, plus a song playing in the background that has been stuck in my head on a loop. In addition to that, I really wish I could remember what it's called, where folks will say a triangle is the color yellow, or Tuesday is blue, or the number 7 is green, where something takes on multiple forms in your memory. That makes it really difficult to build a connection with someone. Literally, your entire life experience is fundamentally different from what the normal is. The even worse one yet is where I can tell when people can tell I'm different and it catches them off guard. Like they start off approaching me like I see them do with everyone else. I try to follow my script perfectly and things go well. Then I will end up saying something off script or speak honestly, and I can just watch their entire composure slightly change. They get this certain look in their eyes, then I can see their mode switch from an engagement-driven mode into a wrap-it-up-and-get-out mode. Then they usually refrain from initiating an interaction with me unless I reach out and it's always quick and polite, but never engaging anymore. Then I see them initiating conversations with others and realizing they're avoiding me because I'm different. It's wonderful.